As for example,
what's the abbreviation?
Okay, it's not important.
Oh,
Believe me. As for example, in the situation of Hashpos HaSeichel, of bestowal of seichel from the Rab to the Talmud. When we first touched this, if you remember, this was like a week ago, and I explained what is the expression Hashpos HaSeichel. Hashpos means to bestow, not to teach. The proper expression for teaching, for giving a seichel, would be to teach seichel, lamed seichel. Hashpos HaSeichel means a gift of seichel. Just as when a person is mashpia needs, a person needs. Hashpos, mashpia tzedakah, mashpia food, whatever that's hashpos, he's giving his food. Seichel, you're not mashpia. Seichel, you teach. The principle in that is that seichel, you teach someone who already has this seichel, koyach ha-seichel. You only alert him. You teach him what his seichel should know, was able to know, is able to grasp. So even though you're actually teaching him something that he does not know, but you're not creating a new entity. You are showing his seichel how you can know such and such. And then the seichel is alerted to it, and he says, yes, I understand. But then there is a name called Hashpos HaSeichel. Hashpos HaSeichel means he's actually gifting seichel such that the Talmud does not have any inkling, any beginning for it. And the Rav is actually giving him a novel quality that he didn't have before. It's been Hashpos HaSeichel. Now, just want to qualify this a little bit. Clearly, the novel quality is only in the sense of the seichel, that it's a novel quality of seichel in AYIN. But this seichel that he is able to gather at that point has a source in Rotzen, has a source in the Nefesh, and ultimately he has a source, but it's not a seichelic source. It's in a completely different realm. And the Rav is mashpia seichel, so that the seichel is now drawn from the source of seichel. This is called Hashpos HaSeichel. Why is it called Hashpos HaSeichel? Why not Limud HaSeichel? Because in fact, a Rav and a Talmud, seems that the Rav and Talmud are in two different realms, two different categories, just like a Melech and the subject. Because the Rav had already risen to a different level, and he brought his seichel. This is why he is properly called a Rav. A Rav is one who has seichel of his own, coming directly from his own source. So he's mashpia the seichel, mashpia seichel, Rav e'atam. The Hashpos HaSeichel Rav e'atam is giving him a novel reality that the Talmud does not possess the awareness of it at all. So in this Hashpos HaSeichel, Harei Harav Einei Mashpia HaSeichel K'nei Shumul Yatzmi. Clearly the Rav would not be mashpia, would not be bestowing, would not be giving the seichel K'nei Shehu Le'atzmi, as the seichel is true to himself, as he understands and he sees it. Like Efes Kotzehu Levat, only Efes Kotzehu, a minimal edge of the seichel, he will give over to the Talmud. What is this? Again, as we explained, you had the mashal of the Melech. The Melech creates a beetle, but he doesn't create a beetle in a beetle sense, but he overwhelms, he gives of his own status to the people. and their individual mitzias is completely absorbed by this status. This is the sechel k'meishu hu li'atzmi, the sechel as it is by the Rav, the sechel as it is by the Rav does not need any explanation, does not need any substantiation, does not need a means by which to grasp it, because he sees the seichel from its inception, from the rotzen and oin against nefesh and level. And to b'mashpia the seichel in that state, in that form, is impossible to the Talmud. Talmud is not in that category. Therefore, when mashpia the seichel, efes kotzeo, an edge, a small edge of that seichel, he is mashpia that which can be expressed and can be shown in a different environment, in a different state of reality. That is the reality where the Talmud is. V'chein ha-Talmud, and similarly the Talmud himself, shemashpia the Talmud koton, when he is mashpia, when he bestows to a Talmud koton to yet a smaller Talmud, Gam kein, there too, eine mashpia ha-seichel, he is not mashpia the seichel, k'mei hu etzlen, as the seichel is by him, as he has it to himself. Here we can have a very clear exposition of this, and motion for this. You teach alabes to a child. The teacher who is teaching alabes doesn't have to be a big lump, but if he's teaching alabes, clearly he knows how to read. So he, when he's teaching an aleph, he's not teaching an aleph in isolation. He sees the aleph as part of a word, and he sees the word as part of a sentence, etc., etc. So it's a completely different perception. But he's not going to teach the Talmud, this is an aleph, part of the word Omar. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't teach him that way. So he teaches him an aleph, a stripped aleph. Which is a much reduced seichel than the way it is by him, even by this Talmud. He's teaching now a lower Talmud. He has to reduce it even further.
Reduce it almost just to the level of a keilim.
Almost just to the level. Yeah. To his keilim, everybody has his own keilim.
What is that? Everybody
has their own keilim. Depends on the level. If you teach a language to a child, or you teach a language to someone who already has knowledge of a language, it's going to be a different teaching, but you're teaching him something that he doesn't know.
Right. Right. Is part of the point here that the seichel gets reduced to a
The point is still going to come. The point is this. He's saying that. Let's see how the Rebbe explains it. So, any mashpia seichel k'meishu li'atzmi, that mashpia the seichel the way it is to himself. And I've explained what is between the atzmi. The atzmi does not need a means to understand what you're talking about. He has it from a higher perception, from a higher level, from a reality level. But when you teach it to a Talmud of a lower rank, of a lower level of seichel, to him you teach it through a means of a keilim. Teach an aleph as an aleph. Hare, okay, 3 lines from the bottom. Hare, thus we see, Sheha'oi Mismahet Mimadrega L'Madrega. Here we have a clear illustration where the oil is reduced Mimadrega L'Madrega, from going from one madrega to the next one. as it goes from the Rav to the Talmud. So that which he teaches the Talmud is not in the same form that he knows it to himself. And in order to teach the Talmud, he has to lower it so that it is less dependent on the oil and more formulated in a form of keilim, in the form that he knows what you're talking about. Same thing, from a more developed Talmud to a lower Talmud. The oil element is mismayed. So what is the oil element in this particular union, in the oil sechel? Like we said, that one who knows how to read an aleph does not represent an aleph. It represents the phenomenon of speech, oral writing. A completely different, a human capability, a human understanding, not a physical aleph. But when he goes down to teach a lower Talmud, he has to reduce the oil and go down to a point where there's hardly any oil. And that's the only way to teach it. That's what Musharim are all about. To bring it out in a form that is not based on oil, but based on the Metzias and keilim. Then the Talmud eventually, hopefully, will develop it and focus in on it, and he will also be able to see the oil in it. But initially, when it's being taught stripped of the oil to the extent possible. So therefore, the Rebbe concludes the whole discussion. 3 lines from the bottom. Here we see that the oil is reduced from madrege to madrege to keilim. On the other hand, from the perspective of the keilim, hare there is the opposite. Kol shebo hashpo lemato, as the mashpo is going down. Lemato lower to lo madrege, he beribe oisis beribe. The hashpo sechel, the lower it is, comes with more words and with more illustrations, more deviations, more mishalim. And it has to be, so to speak, structured in tangible manner. Shehamashpia le'atzmei ein tzorech al kol zeh. To mashpia unto himself does not require all this structuring and all of this laying out in detail. Rag b'shvil hamkabel, and this is not exclusively b'shvil hamkabel for the sake of the makabel. The makabel you cannot give sechel in its pure manner, because his seichel is a limited seichel, and therefore he can only take seichel within a certain structure, and that's why the mashpil reduces it to a less oyer and more keilim. It's pointed out that when you look at the Shalos Utshuvas, the responses, we had Shalos Utshuvas throughout all generations. There was a Rishonim, there was even responses that the Gemara tells us stories of among the Amoraim. They sent questions from one city to the other city, and then there were responses among the Rishonim, and then the response among Achreinim, and all the way down to our own time. And there are large volumes of written and printed now Sforim and responses. And responses is an extremely important part of halacha. This is where a certain halacha is being discussed in great detail to bring it out to a practical level. And all Rabbanim utilize these responses very extensively. So if you take a book of responses from a Rishon versus a book of responses of Achri, of a Rishon, a question, the question normally is much longer in expressing itself than the response. The response is like a single line. Even if he gives a reference, it's a very simple reference. And the question is a long elaboration of what the question is about. As you go down to further down, the lower rank, the Achreinim, there are Shailas of Tshuvas, Sforim, where a Shaila is a few lines, and the Tshuva is pages and pages and pages. Because the Tshuva bears with it also the basis for the Tshuva. Just a reference to the Gemara is not sufficient. And the Rambam says...
Can I ask something? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll wait.
The Rambam says...
I'll wait.
Okay. That the Paskin HaShaila from the Mishnah is forbidden. Because no question you will misunderstand. A Mishnah has to be placed in exact situation and exact formulation. Even from the Gemara you can't pass it. Then it goes down, you can't pass it from Rishonim. You can't pass it from Achreinim. The real psak din, at least for us, comes when something is being presented as halacha l'maisa, not a halacha on the limud level, on the learning level, on the people level, but a halacha that is concluded by a Ram and say, here's what you do. That's why responses are so important, because responses are halacha l'maisa. Yes, Shlomo.
As it's explained that how the Rav must be cycled to Tammuz with keilim, so why do we need a hashpur to keep over the cycle itself?
The reason there is so much keilim, and it has to be so broadly elaborated, is because this is something totally novel to the Talmud. And the keilim are not giving him the seichel. The keilim are a means of which the Talmud can now focus in and get to the point of the seichel. Without the keilim, he wouldn't even begin to know what you're talking about. He can repeat what you said, but he will not.
What is our spore part? What is the hashpur part of
the hashpur part is that he's giving him the seichel as he has it.
Is this like
but he's saying he's not giving you over that cycle because it's not how it's last.
No. That's why he's mashpia seichel, but he uses the means by which to give it to the Talmud. But what he wants the Talmud to get and to know is precisely the seichel as he has it. But he can't be mashpia to him the way it is by him. He has to reduce it. It's much less oil. Eventually the Talmud will delve into that, and he'll begin and he will reflect onto the seichel as he was given to him in a reduced form. And eventually he will, hopefully, because that's what the point of our Talmud is, that he would then eventually find the seichel in his own mind, and he will be able to rise up to the seichel harav. It may take 40 years, but that's the idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Earlier, the distance between Rav and Talmud was less. Would that be accurate? The Shuvas were so brief because they were on the same page, pretty much. Comes later generations, pages and pages because of the distance, extra keilim needed to make the exports.
Yeah. There are Shuvas in Rambam. That's interesting. When the Rambam expresses in his Shuvah, he says, he writes like this: from the way you formulate your question, I can tell that you are a learned person. That you're a chacham. Because you're a chacham, I can give you the answer. Okay, so we're on the bottom line of Beis Ches, and the Rebbe has concluded this principle that there's a difference between the way things are in the keilim realm, in the oil realm. The lower it is, the more reduced the oil is. The higher it is, more increases the oil. On the keilim level, it's just the opposite. The lower it is more keilim. The higher it is, it's less keilim.